This is part one of your novel study on The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. This novel is about an individual's journey to realize one's full potential and to understand one's calling. Paul Coelho suggests that this is accomplished by listening to one's heart. He further suggests that that calling or personal legend is realized through a holistic approach that unites one's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. To develop his ideas about listening to one's heart, he employs allusions to pantheistic religions like native spirituality and Shintoism, as well as using allusions to monotheistic religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He does not subscribe to one belief system over another, but rather wants to underscore the oneness of our human experience. As a means to look at the novel, The Alchemist, and to prepare you to write your last unit essay and possibly your final written exam, you will look at the novel in 4 sections by noting and discussing in each part a summary of events, a listing of significant quotes, and a notation on character development. Ideally, you should read the novel at least twice, the first time on your own, and then a second time as you go through the unit study materials. Each part is roughly 50 pages long, but each part will be marked by a retelling of a significant event to ensure you understand where a part ends and a new part begins. The first part is set up in the novel as part 1 and is the first 50 pages, which takes you up to when Santiago agrees to work with the crystal shopkeeper. In each of the 4 parts, you'll be provided a video to assist you in understanding the symbolic meaning within this allegorical novel. Then you'll be expected to do a short assignment for each part that will help you to focus on building ideas for your critical analytical essay you are writing for this unit. As well, the assignments will work on building your analytical skills for your final exam and future language arts classes. Timely submission of your assignments will be an important means of receiving feedback on the understanding of the novel and the development of your ideas for the essay topic. So let's begin by looking at part 1 of the novel. The events will be listed on the PowerPoint, while the analysis of those events will be provided in audio format. Then we'll look at some significant quotes and the ideas they are expressing, and then finally we'll look at the initial development of Santiago's character. The events, quotes, and character development listed are not an exhaustive coverage of the ideas found within the first part of the novel, so you might want to add details to these notes, but hopefully it will give you a good start on interpreting the allegory and help you to understand the text in a way that will assist you in your essay writing. So the first event is Santiago arrives with a herd of sheep at an abandoned church with an enormous sycamore tree growing in it. The abandoned church suggests the world's loss of spirituality, and especially organized religion, for it is described as abandoned. However, since his dream reoccurs while sleeping there, it suggests that he is listening to his heart and he is seeking greater understanding of himself beyond just the physical well-being. Since this is the beginning of the journey to realize his dream, it suggests that to realize our purpose, we must be open and listening to our own spirit's cry for fulfillment. The placement of the sycamore tree in the midst of the church is a biblical allusion to Zacchaeus, a reviled tax collector who climbed a tree to see Christ and later repented of his ways and sought to follow Christ's teachings, especially Christ's call for charity to all. So the dream and the journey begin by realizing an emptiness and a wish for fulfillment, but also with an openness and a charity towards ourselves and others. The next chosen event is using a book as a pillow. He goes to sleep but wakes to the same dream he had a week ago. This event shows how Santiago continues the learning process by carrying a book with him, even though he has placed most of his focus on traveling and learning all about shepherding. He continues to seek understanding through others' recorded ideas, but he is also learning instinctively about the natural environment and his place in the world. He wakes the sheep and ponders whether they know his schedule or he knows theirs. This thought reflects his growing awareness that he is becoming more comfortable in his ways and is no longer learning. He has spent 2 years as a shepherd and has traveled most of the countryside and has learned as much as he can about shepherding. He realizes that shepherding is no longer as fulfilling as it once was, for he is becoming like the sheep. He's following and not leading. He thinks about the merchant's daughter and longs to visit with her again. He reflects on why he became a shepherd-seeking traveler and seeking new horizons to explore his world on his own terms and not through the eyes of others like the seminary. The merchant's daughter suggests an earlier awakening to something more. He realizes he's not fulfilled. He's spent a whole year dreaming about her. So he realizes that he's ready to move forward, but he hasn't really made the commitment to move forward. He dreams of her, but never works to fulfill that dream. Another element in that summary is his father cautioned him that many have passed through this very village, seeking their own answers, and expressed how they would like to live in Andalusia. He states that the travelers had money, and the only other travelers that he knows of are those who are shepherds. This event is a foreshadowing of the final events within the novel, and helps the reader to understand that the journey to realize self-fulfillment is often more an internal journey rather than an external journey. One's happiness is not found in external elements, but rather in the internal. Santiago believed he needed to find out about their worlds for himself, so the father gave him gold coins in inheritance to go pursue his legend. This is the story of the prodigal son, in which the son asks for his inheritance before the death of his parent, and then seeks to live life to its utmost. However, when he is out of funds, he returns to his father and begs him to accept him back. The father rejoices to have his son back and puts on a feast for him. The father gives Santiago some gold coins and lets his son go, knowing that Santiago needed to experience life and learn his own lessons. Santiago recognizes that the knowledge he has grasped through the seminary is not enough. He needs to understand his own place in the world, and he needs to see things through his own set of eyes. It also speaks about a parent's role. A parent's role is to encourage and to support a son or a daughter in terms of finding their own personal legend. Santiago states it's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting. This is Santiago and us too, understanding that hope is the driving force in our lives, and it's what brings joy and purpose to us. After 2 years of shepherding, he wants to seek another means of self-fulfillment. This would suggest that life is about setting up a series of goals and dreams as we live out our lives. He seeks out the gypsy lady to interpret his dream. She demands 1/10 of his potential treasure to interpret the dream. The incident with the gypsy woman offers a number of insights into our journey of life. One insight is that we overcomplicate the pursuit. The gypsy's only real guidance to Santiago is that yes, he has had a dream, and yes, it's worthy of pursuing that dream. Often as individuals, we place complications in front of ourselves that provide excuses not to pursue our goal, and we also seem to need validation and support to pursue our dreams. The other insight about our pursuit is that it doesn't come without costs. He has to promise to give 1/10 of his treasure if he finds it. Another idea present is that we need to be open to omens. He seeks out the gypsy fortune teller and listens to her interpretation of his dream. For many, the Roma people, the gypsies, are not to be trusted or believed, but his dream creates a willingness or an openness to see whether his dream is an omen. In his dream, a child tells him to go to the pyramids in Egypt to find his treasure, and the gypsy lady just restates what he already knew. And he feels disappointed that there aren't any interpretations needed. She states the simplest things require the greatest wisdom. This is a real focus on the idea that as children, we have the ability to dream and dream big. And it also speaks about the eagerness we have to follow those dreams. And one of the things that Paul Coelho is trying to point out to us is that that eagerness is what is needed to pursue our dreams. And sometimes we need to keep it simple to achieve those dreams. The use of the pyramids as a symbol speaks to the greatness of that dream, and also to the idea that it will be self-fulfilling. The pyramids are one of the great mysteries of civilization, and it's also one of the man's greatest achievements. So when we think about the dreams that we have, we want to be looking at ourselves and see that we are one of the greatest mysteries to ourselves sometimes, and we're also going to be one of our greatest achievements. As Santiago is sitting, an old man named Melchizedek sits down beside him, but Santiago is not initially interested in conversation with the old man. The old man doesn't at first introduce himself. Rather, he looks to see how receptive Santiago is to him. This is all about the idea that we need to be open and not judgmental, and we have to be receptive to new people in our lives and to what they can bring. This is this intersecting of lives in our world, this connection that we can make if we don't judge. It also suggests the need to be attentive and charitable. But the old man begins to engage Santiago in a discussion and then reveals unknown elements of Santiago's life and imparts his wisdom about the dream He suggests that one's only obligation in life is to pursue one's personal legend. Later, the old man introduced himself as Melchizedek from Salem, which the city Salem is a shortened form of the name Jerusalem. Melchizedek is a forerunner of the Jewish faith. He is a man who comes before Abraham, and Abraham is the beginning of the Jewish religion. The first recorded man acknowledged by God as righteous, and a figure that is often connected to Christ. The inclusion of this character of Melchizedek suggests a wise, all-knowing, righteous man who is a guiding force for others. Often we fail to recognize the knowledge and power of our elders, and we fail to acknowledge the blessing of their wisdom. When Santiago shows an attentiveness and a kindness to Melchizedek, Kahelo suggests it's important to be attentive to all, but especially to our elders. For their journeys, they have gained wisdom and righteousness. He also states, all books describe people's inability to choose their own personal legends, and it's a lie. As the conversation continues, Melchizedek tells Santiago about his past and his dream and encourages him to pursue it. Melchizedek also explains that much of the unhappiness in the world is derived from the inability of people to not forge through difficulties to realize their dreams, which instills happiness. They take up the lie that they can't achieve that personal legend. Melchizedek encourages Santiago to pursue his legend, but asks for 1/10 of Santiago's flock. He demands for 1/10 of the flock. Typically, 1/10 is a tithe that a church would ask for parishioners to contribute to sustain the church. So the 1/10 is there as a commitment to that church, to that faith. So this is a commitment to follow the personal legend. As well, it's also stating this idea that wealth does not bring us happiness. It's really about us going on the journey and really realizing our personal goal. Melchizedek encourages Santiago to listen to the omens, and he provides Santiago with 2 stones, Umen and Thummim, which can be used to make decisions when Santiago is indecisive. The gift of the 2 stones, Umen and Thummim, to Santiago are a show of support and encouragement by Melchizedek, and can be used in helping Santiago make decisions. This is this idea of when we hit those real hard parts in our lives and those real stumbling blocks, we need to be able to be reflective and understand that people are there supporting us. Now, anytime Santiago pulls out those stones, he reflects on Melchizedek and Melchizedek's words. And so this is really about us understanding that we need sometimes support and reassurance in our journey to realize our personal legend. The next day, Santiago gives 1/10 of his flock away and sells the remaining flock and boards a boat for Tangier across the Mediterranean Sea to go pursue his legend. Moving across the Mediterranean Sea is a movement from the known to the unknown in our world. It's the risk-taking that we take when we step into something new and uncertain. And so when he goes into the city of Tangier, he's going to be introduced to an unknown language, the Arabic language, an unknown culture, the Arabic culture, a belief system, the Muslim faith, and he's going to see practices that he's not comfortable with. And so this is really about us learning how to be the risk-taker and move into the unknown. And you're going to see that he struggles with it at first. Melchizedek then tells a story about a boy sent who is asked to carry a spoon of oil through a palace. The first time he goes through and he drops the oil and he comes back and the father tells him that he has to be responsible. So the story of the boy holding a spoon is a reminder to Santiago to not lose sight of the mission he is on, to find his personal legend. No matter what distracting forces he might see in the palace, he has a responsibility to live out his legend, as we all do. When Santiago reaches Tangier, he goes to a bar and then is robbed by a young man he befriends. So this is this movement into the unknown. The barroom in Tangier is a scene of uncertainty and fear for Santiago. If you reread this section, you see how he falls back into quick judgments about the land, the people, and the culture. He is not open to new experiences. He calls their practice during the call to prayer as the practice of infidel. Paul Kahelo shows how fear and uncertainty have the ability to make us revert to close-minded practices and to lash out at others. And so this really is a stumbling block within ourselves, that we want that certainty, and so we see everything that is strange as wrong. He clings to the known, the young man who speaks Spanish, and won't even entertain the idea of looking at the unknown, and that's the Arabic-speaking bartender. This leads to a significant setback as he's then robbed by the Spanish-speaking boy. Santiago's pursuit of his legend is seemingly stopped when he loses his funds and is in despair because of it then. Left without resources, he questions his ability to realize his legend, but as he reaches into his pouch, the 2 stones fall, and he sees it as an omen and asks the stones whether Melchizedek is supporting him. He feels if Melchizedek is still with him, then he can be the adventurer and not the victim. And this really speaks to the idea that once we hit that uncertainty, we can't be stopped. We need to forge through that uncertainty and find that comfort level again. And then we move on from there. And so when he loses the money, he feels very disempowered and he has to push through all that. Santiago meets a candy merchant that provides Santiago with the first sweet of the day. When he goes into the middle of the market and he sleeps through the night in despair, he wakes in the morning to a candy maker who actually gives him a sample of his first batch of candy. And Santiago sees the candy seller smiling and happy, and he recognizes that the candy seller is living out his personal legend. And he recognizes that the smile is a universal language in itself. And he sees that in that world there is happiness still, and there's a universal connection. And so Santiago sees this as a good omen and is reminded that all things are one. This illustrates how the kindness of strangers can be such an uplifting force in our lives. And we don't count on that kindness, but once we encounter it, it seems to really propel us to the next step. He moved around the market and remembers Melchizedek saying all things are one. And so he has given up, he's opened up again to the idea that just because it's strange doesn't mean it's not welcoming. Santiago then offers to clean the glassware, the crystal, in a crystal shop, and a few sales are made, which is seen as a good omen by the shopkeeper. So the shopkeeper ends up hiring him. The whole thing with the crystal shopkeeper is kind of a reflection on what occurs that is distinctive from the candy maker. Santiago takes it upon himself to clean the crystal in the hopes that the shopkeeper will hire him. Now, the use of crystal brings 2 insights. One is that sand is used to create glass through a transformative process, which creates a beautiful and productive product. And this is kind of symbolizing Santiago transformation in the sense. But that the glassware and the crystal are all dusty and needing cleaning really points to the shopkeeper's unwillingness to really pursue his personal legend. Where we see that the candy maker is happy in his pursuit, the crystal shopkeeper seems to have given up hope and is in despair that he'll ever make any money at selling crystal. The second insight that we want to see out of this whole experience in the crystal shop is that Santiago and the shopkeeper are similar in that they were both comfortable in staying in that level of comfort. So Santiago has been comfortable as a shepherd, and the crystal shopkeeper is quite comfortable in selling the crystal. However, Santiago has gone beyond the comfort and has moved out and is ready to go through Tangier and then through to the pyramids up until he gets the money stolen. And so what we see out of the crystal shopkeeper is that he's unwilling to move forward. He fears too much, and this is really showing us the contrast. If we live a life that is less fearful, then we will have promise with us, we'll have hope. But if we live in fear, our hope is lost. So let's go to the quotes that we might take a look at. The quotes in part 1 suggest a growing awareness, excitement, and happiness about moving forward in the search for one's personal legend and self-fulfillment. The idea that we need to pursue what provides purpose and happiness in our lives is what Paul Coelho mentioned in his interview with Oprah, and which resonates throughout the novel with such quotes as, "I couldn't have found God in a seminary, he thought as he looked at the sunrise." So this is a reflection on the idea that we need to stay connected into our environment and see all the promise that our environment gives to us. It's the simple things in life that are the most extraordinary. Only wise men are able to understand them. An average person often gets caught up in the whirlwind of living out their lives and not really taking note of just what the simple things are in life that give us joy. That's our interconnectedness. Some other quotes that were given that really pull to that idea of awareness, excitement, and happiness. It's a force that appears to be negative, but actually shows how to realize our personal legend, a mysterious force. Those are some of the stumbling blocks, but if we turn it around, those stumbling blocks are building blocks, and we need to understand that. So there's a sign of hope there. A personal legend is our mission on earth, and when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. All those speak to the awareness, the excitement, and happiness that we can find in pursuing our legend. The second set of quotes show how seeking our own self-fulfillment is serving others, as well as building an interconnectedness within the world and a sense of oneness. In those quotes, the soul of the world is nourished by people's happiness. That's showing that as we build our own personal happiness, we are building the happiness of others. When each day is the same as the next, it's because people fail to recognize the good things. Again, that interconnectedness. A shepherd may like to travel, but he should never forget about his sheep. This is really showing that self-fulfillment brings along with it responsibilities to each other as we move through our lives. The last set of quotes here, the third idea seen in these quotes, is how setbacks occur within our lives. But persistence and a positive attitude can see us through such setbacks and put us back on the path to self-fulfillment. I'm like everyone else. I see the world in terms of what I would like to see happen, not what actually does. Or learn to recognize omens and follow them. All of these are showing us that we need to keep on pushing forward and see those omens. And both of you and I needed to cleanse our minds of negative thoughts. That's the shopkeeper, really showing that he understands he has negative thoughts, but we need to pursue and push forward through those negative thoughts. At one point, Santiago says, no hope, no adventure, no old kings or personal legends, no treasure and no pyramids. It was as if the world had fallen silent because the boy's soul had. He had lost hope after he had lost his money, and really it's hard for him to find hope, and he doesn't know what to do. He's lost a little. And finally, that quote, I'll work for you, I need enough money to buy some sheep. That one really speaks to the idea that he is putting one foot in front of the other. He really thinks that he'll go back to Spain and buy another herd of sheep. And that's our step backwards sometimes when we get defeated. We say, oh, well, we'll just go back to what we were doing before. And we don't push forward those times of extreme despair. Last, let's take a look at the character development of Santiago through this opening and how we can best describe his character in the initial stage. Some of these ideas can be used in your first body paragraph as you explore the path of self-fulfillment in one's life and the resulting impact of that pursuit. So he's intelligent. He realizes that the seminary is only presenting one side of life, and he feels it's very limited, and he needs to explore that life for himself and to find his own sense of what the world is all about. We see that he's courageous. He becomes a shepherd when he knows nothing about being a shepherd. He goes out and he faces predators like wolves and all sorts of things that might harm his sheep. And then he steps out into Tangiers later on. He's intuitive. He follows a path that always leads to pasture for the sheep, and he trusts his dreams to lead to the answers he's seeking. He opens himself to the idea of new possibilities. He's seeking. He gives up the seminary to travel, and he wants to seek the treasure. He's inspired by Melchizedek's knowledge of himself. When Melchizedek was really a stranger to him, Melchizedek already knew about him. As well, Santiago is inspired by the great wisdom of the old man, who speaks to him about the great lie and the one goal a person is set on earth to complete. He's excited. Once committed to pursuing the dream, he feels a sense of wonder and excitement. Pyramids fascinate him. He boards the boat to Tangier, full of a little bit of fear, but mostly excitement. But he's naive. He trusts too easily, and he's deceived by a young man who steals his money. And finally, he's disappointed by the old woman, the gypsy lady. He finds his dream might be too simple, too clear, yet difficult to achieve without a large commitment. And then later on, he recognizes without money, his dream is almost impossible to achieve. And he sees he is a stranger in a strange land. And he's falling back into himself. He's not confident within himself, and he becomes resolved to go back to what he knew, what his comfort level. So what we see from the very beginning is really just this opening up, this excitement, this joy to be moving on with a dream, and then facing the first hurdle and being almost crushed by it. So initially, what do we see in that first stage? As Santiago acknowledges his dream that will bring self-fulfillment, he's filled with hope and excitement, but he is also naive about the hurdles he might face and becomes disappointed when the dream has setbacks. The setbacks also destroy his confidence, and he lets fear set in to the point he only wants to return to what he knows and what provides a sense of security and comfort. So now we've gone through the first part. Hopefully that will give you a sense of what has happened in the first part of this novel, and really lays down the foundation from which we'll proceed in the second part.